I had all kinds of obstacles. You wouldn't believe the crazy obstacles I had when I started BNI. I mean, people thought we were Amway or multi-level marketing. And we're like, No,
Exactly. Yeah.
we're not." And so
Mm-hmm.
that was the first big obstacle. And then it was creating systems and processes that could be replicated. And then we decided to make it local ownership, and that was an obstacle. And then, of course, years later, COVID. Oh my goodness, what an obstacle
Mm-hmm.
that was! And guess what? We have obstacles today. Do you think there'll be obstacles tomorrow? Yeah,
Always.
there are
Yeah.
always obstacles, and so we get so caught up in the problem
Mm-hmm.
that we become experts at the problem
Mm-hmm.
and we don't think about the solution. The key to scaling a business and being successful, I think, one of the important keys is to hold the vision,
Mm-hmm.
not the obstacles.
This is Challenger Brands, helping you build better brands and businesses. Hosted by Illustrado, the brand development and creative agency for ambitious and audacious challenger brands.
Welcome to another episode of Challenger Brands, where we help you build better brands and businesses. I'm Lalaine Chu Benitez, Managing Director here at Illustrado Brand Development and Creative Agency, your host at this podcast. Today we have a very special topic. It's hard enough to build a business, let alone grow it and scale it. But what if a business can grow by itself? What if a business can self-propagate? That'll be awesome, right? So if you want to learn insights on how to build a self-propagating business, please do stick around. In the meantime, I'd like to thank our constant supporters, Rove Hotels. And on the show right now, I keep saying this, I'm so intimidated to introduce him because I'm a big fan. And that's no joke. He is the father of modern networking. Dr. Ivan Misner is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the largest international networking association. BNI has 11,000 chapters across the globe. That's not members, that's chapters, okay? BNI operates across 76 countries, and since its founding in 1985, members of BNI have shared some $23 billion in business. It's not only that, he hasn't only found an amazing organization that self propagates itself. Dr. Meisner is also an author with 29 books under his belt. He is a New York Times best-selling author, and he's got a lot of awards that he has received. Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross. He is also the recipient of the John C. Maxwell Leadership Award, and he is the co-founder of the BNI Charitable Foundation. And if that's not enough for you, during his spare time, he is also an amateur magician and a black belter in karate. Dr. Meisner, it's so intimidating. Like I said earlier, you've got so much achievements that you have had across the years. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you for having me on. And don't be uncomfortable. I'm pretty easy to talk to.
Yeah, it's just that we're real fans. I've joined BNI for the last 2 years and I've learned an amazing amount of good lessons. Not only networking, but being an entrepreneur and being a part of a community that helps each other.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's really my intention for BNI was, I mean, first it was about generating referrals, but then it was about supporting entrepreneurs supporting entrepreneurs. And as you mentioned, we have over 11,000 chapters. Now it's 11,150 chapters, 75 countries, 328,000 members. You mentioned 23 billion in business. That was just last year. That was just
Mm-hmm.
in 2023. Now, to put that in perspective for those of you listening or watching, um, based on the United Nations estimates of GDP, gross domestic product, there are actually 100 countries
Mm-hmm.
in the world with a lower GDP than what BNI
Amazing.
generated for its members last year. That blows my mind. I just can't believe that we've done that much business for business people who impact local communities.
Exactly. That is indeed mind blowing. I mean, beyond the commerce. And I always say this, to say that you have 11,000 chapters across the world, that sounds small by other standards, if we look at the bigger scheme of things. But when I think about BNI, you've got 11,000 chapters, each chapter maybe having 50 to 60 people. And these are entrepreneurs that are committed, they're devoted, not just to show up every week, they're committed to help each other. So this is a totally different ball game. It's not just about having an organization, it's about having people who are actually, doing the job of helping each other move, their businesses forward.
Yeah, and that's really one of our principal core values, as you very well know. You could go to any, and this is what I love about my organization, is that you can go to any chapter anywhere in the world and ask, in 2 words, what's the philosophy of the organization, or what's our principal core value? And they'll tell you givers gain. And to me, givers gain is more than a phrase. It's a way of living one's life. It's a perspective to view and interact with the world. It's an attitude, not an expectation. And when it's applied properly, it'll change your life. And when it changes enough lives, it'll change the world. And that's what we're trying to do in BNI.
Yeah, I have a feeling that a couple of decades from now, this is going to be prized as one of those philosophies, like a Stoic philosophy or something like that. It's such an amazing, these are just amazing words to live by. And like you said, it's not only about business. It doesn't only apply in BNI, it applies through life, right?
Absolutely, it does.
I'm really interested to know, Ivan, how did you found BNI? How did it start, and how did it snowball so big like this?
Well, I'd like to tell you I had this vision of an international organization with chapters all over the world. But the truth is, I was looking for some referrals for my consulting practice. I was a management consultant, and I wanted to bring in some close friends and give them referrals. And I hoped that they were willing to give me referrals. And we had that first chapter, and someone came who couldn't join because we only take, as you know, one person per professional classification, and hers was taken. And she asked me if I would help her open a group. And I actually said, no, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. I don't run a network. And she talked me into it because, it was helping business. And I said, okay, fine. And we opened a second chapter, and 2 people came who couldn't join because of a classification conflict. And they both said, would you help us open up our own chapters? I'm like, no, this isn't what I do. And they talked me into it. And at the end of the year, we had 20 chapters without me trying. And that's when I realized that I had struck a chord in the business community. We don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. We don't teach network, social capital, emotional intelligence. And it hit me. This is something that business people need. And that's when I decided to really sit down and create a plan to scale the business globally.
At which part of your journey did you think about this? How many years has BNI been running until you realized that this could be something big and international?
It was in December of 1985. I started BNI in January of 85, so it was almost 12 months. And I had what I would call my Brody moment. You remember the movie Jaws? Sheriff Brody, at the end of the movie, he's throwing chum out into the water. He's on a boat. And you see the shark for the very first time, and it comes up out of the water. And Sheriff Brody turns to the captain and he says, "You're going to need a bigger boat." And it was at that point, really 12 months in, that I realized I'm going to need a bigger boat. So how big? Well, I was teaching at a university then. I was teaching management theory and organizational behavior. And so I went to the university library once a week because there was no such thing as Google. This is 1985, right? Well, now, early 1986. And so I had to go to the library and do research as to, how many cities are there in the country, in the world, what's the populations. And after about 6 months of doing analysis and calculations, I figured that we could someday have 10,000 chapters. And I remember telling a friend of mine, his name was Bruce. And I said, Bruce, now this is June of 86, 18 months into BNI. I said, Bruce, I think this BNI thing, I think someday we could have 10,000 chapters. And I remember him looking at me and saying, and
strange looks.
Chapters? Yeah. How many chapters do you have now, Ivan? I said, well, we have 30. And he said, wait a minute, you have 30 chapters and you think you can have 10,000? I said, yeah, absolutely. I believe we can have 10,000 chapters. And in 2020, we crossed the 10,000 chapter mark.
I hope you gave Bruce a plaque or something to remind him.
I wish I had stayed in touch with him over the last 30 years. I would certainly reach out to him and let him know, hey, we have 10,000 chapters now, over 11,000.
I mean, I totally believe that. People say that the best entrepreneurs out there are sometimes considered crazy because they talk
Yeah.
about things that other people can't see, right?
Yeah, and look, I get it where sometimes people are, they're chasing a dream that's just not going to happen. But I had proof of concept. So it's not like I didn't have proof of concept. I knew it worked. It worked. Okay, it worked only on 30 groups, but it worked and it worked really well. And I saw no reason why we couldn't continue to expand that. So, once a business has a good, solid proof of concept that is successful, then dream big, create a big vision. And 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 here's probably one of the best lessons that I can give your viewership. You're going to run into obstacles. There's going to be so many obstacles. Hold the vision, not the obstacles. When I started BNI, I had all kinds of obstacles. You wouldn't believe the crazy obstacles I had when I started BNI. I mean, people thought we were Amway or multi-level marketing. And we're like, no,
Exactly. Yeah.
we're not. And so that was the first big obstacle. And then it was creating systems and processes that could be replicated. And then we decided to make it local ownership, and that was an obstacle. And then, of course, years later, COVID. Oh my goodness, what an obstacle that was! And guess what? We have obstacles today. Do you think there'll be obstacles tomorrow? Yeah,
Always.
there are
Yeah.
always obstacles, and so we get so caught up in the problem that we become experts at the problem and we don't think about the solution. The key to scaling a business and being successful, I think, one of the important keys is to hold the vision, not the obstacles. I talk about that,
Definitely.
by the way, in my latest book, the Third Paradigm, which is about co-creation.
That sounds great. When toward scalability, right? What were the building blocks? Now I know that you have very famous core principles for BNI, but what were the building blocks to build this business into something that scales like this?
Yeah, well, the first was to create systems and write everything down. But there are other really important things. One that I think business people really forget or don't understand or don't embrace is that if you want to truly build a successful business, you have to learn to do six things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things
I love that.
6 times. And most business people are constantly they're doing 1,000 things 6 times. I keep this in my drawer because I talk about this topic from time to time. People are constantly chasing bright, shiny objects. It's like, ooh, let's try this. Let's try
Yes.
that. Untried. Nobody with success is doing that. So one of the things you got to ask yourself is, what, by the way, it doesn't have to be six. It could be five. It could be seven. It's a handful of things. But what you want to ask yourself is, who do you know who's done it successfully or done something similar to what you're trying to do successfully? What did they do? Do that. Don't start chasing stuff from people that say they know what they're doing, but don't have a track record. Follow somebody with a track record and then do that six things 1,000 times. That's one of the, I mean, if I have any superpower at all as a business person, it is that I am a dog with a bone. I am relentless in dealing with an
I
issue
love that.
until I fix it.
Yeah, let me just repeat that for our listeners and viewers. Six things 1,000 times, not 1,006, not 1,000 things 6 times. That's
Right.
very good. I witnessed, and this is the reason why I got so interested to talk to you. I attended one chapter launch, right? So let me just paint the picture. I'm in this big hall in a hotel in Dubai with over 100 people all excited to launch this new chapter. And the air was electrified. It's electrifying. The air
Yeah,
was
the
so
energy.
vibrant. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, all these entrepreneurs came today. None of them are getting paid for this. They
Yeah.
don't work for the BNI company, and yet they're opening chapters. They're showing up. They're showing up for other people. So I said, I need to ask Dr. Ivan Meisner what the secret sauce is. I mean, how do you get people to move for you like this?
Well, first of all, the people that are participating in the chapters are making money by promoting their business. So
Of course.
so this time that they spend, because I have people say, "Why should I spend time as a member of the leadership team?" It's because if you build a chapter, you make more money. This is your marketing efforts. BNI is all about marketing. It's about creating referrals for life. Now there is somebody, I mean, it's a locally owned and operated program in most countries. So there is somebody who oversees it, but they bring in people who are running individual chapters, and those individuals make money through the referrals for their business. And so it's really about promoting their business. Now you asked what the secret sauce is. I think culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is the secret sauce for creating an amazing organization. And BNI has created an amazing culture, starting with the philosophy of givers gain and the remaining 6 core values that we use in the company.
Culture is the secret sauce. Another great, quote to remember. How do you empower everybody in the system, right? And again, going back to what you said, culture is the secret sauce. So how do you even begin to make people feel that they can move in such a way that this is going to carry the business forward? Because I'm seeing Dr. Meisner or Ivan, I'm seeing that this is really beyond the business that I'm getting. This is beyond what people are getting in terms of referrals.
Yeah.
So how do you move them to that place where they will take the initiative, right? Beyond whatever referrals they can get out of the system.
Well, it takes time. It takes time to teach people how to do this effectively. We have a lot of training programs. We have Business Builder, which is online. It has had hundreds of thousands of hours of members watching different things. But I mean, in a nutshell, here's a couple of the things that one needs to understand. That if you want to create the culture, then you have to train it into your audience. You have to teach people the concepts. And in a program like BNI, there's a system and there's a process. And in most businesses, there has to be a system and a process, and you have to apply those. But you have to apply the rules of a program in any company. You need to apply the rules more like Mandela than Attila. And what happens is that people, they don't know. They're like, well, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. Instead, what we try to teach our leadership teams to do is to ask, how can we help you? How can we help you bring more referrals? How can we help you bring visitors to the group? How can we help you, be at the meetings every week? These are the questions that you need to ask. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that's part of creating a healthy culture, is showing people you care about their success. And those are all the building blocks of what makes a great organizational culture.
I like how balanced your views are, because for some organizations, culture is something that's diaphanous and it's like woo-woo, it's like nobody can really define it, and people keep talking about culture. But the way you talk about culture is founded on systems, is founded on training, is founded on clearly written rules for all the members. So I think that's very solid, and that's a great lesson for entrepreneurs to take on.
And one of the ways that you help to create the culture you want in a group, starting from the bottom up, is to talk about the core values. So one of the things we recommend is that the education coordinators every year spend a few weeks talking about the core values of the organization. And rather than them lecture, we recommend the education coordinator pick somebody in the chapter in advance, not, don't just call them on the spot. Pick them in advance and say, what core value resonates most with you? And they might say traditions plus innovation. Great. So next week, I'm going to have you do 2 or 3 minutes on why traditions and innovation resonates with you. And then you have somebody stand up and they talk about why this core value is important to them. And if you do that week after week, and we've got 7 core values, you're doing it for almost 2 months, then you're constantly reinforcing the core values of the organization in a way that helps. It doesn't make it a great culture, but it helps to establish a great culture and maintain a great culture.
Definitely. I mean, I love how specific the guidelines are in BNI, how everything has a system and there are resources to help you out. That's definitely appreciated. Ivan, what are the challenges that you've encountered building a business like this that scales on its own?
Well, the first really was understanding the leaky bucket uh, theory is if you train me how to do something, some of the information leaks out. And then when I train somebody else, more information leaks out. And so by the time you're at the third or fourth generation of training, you have a half a bucket of information. And then what happens is people start putting stuff in. And when they start putting their own stuff in, it may not be congruent with where you want to go. So from the beginning, it was very important to write everything down. So I said, create systems, but don't just create systems, write them all down and train on the systems and get consistency on the training on the systems. We ran into problems as we grew internationally. The language barrier, we would find that people would just start changing stuff in a different language. We couldn't track it. But the beauty of much of our training now for leadership teams is that it's all universal and it's online. And there are subtitles in the language, or there's an over voice in the language that the person is watching it in. So that we're working more and more towards consistency in training and education, and that's critical. And that was the first massive problem that has reared its ugly head over and over again.
Well, what is the role of technology in your system right now?
Well, a lot of people think, we have 11,000 groups. They meet every week in person. And by the way, before COVID, we were just under 10,000, and they all met in person. If I said in 2019, in a year, we're going to all be meeting online, people would have thought I was insane. But when COVID hit, we transitioned almost 10,000 chapters literally overnight to online. Today, 68% of our organization has gone back to in-person. 16% is completely online, and 16% are hybrid. They meet once a month in person and the rest of the month online. So technology has been very important in the last few years, but it's always been important. You can't have a 3-letter domain, bni.com, bni.com, if you're not an early adopter to technology. So we've been an early adopter to technology, and the story of BNI Connect and how we created a platform sort of like LinkedIn, but just for members of BNI, is in the book, The Third Paradigm. So I'm going to tell you a secret, okay? You can't share this with anyone except the people that are listening to this.
Yes,
I tell
please.
a story about an online platform, and this is the book for anyone that's looking for it. It's called The Third Paradigm.
The third paradigm.
The third paradigm, which is about co-creation. It's competition, cooperation, co-creation. We tell a story in the book about Richard in this online platform, but we never reveal that the online platform, okay, this is just between us, right? The online platform is BNI Connect, and Richard is my middle name. And so it is a story of my disastrous first implementation of BNI Connect and what I did to fix it through co-creation. But we don't say it's me in the book because we didn't want the book to be about one of the co-authors. So we just we say it's a true story and it's Richard. But when I talk to people, I tell them the truth.
That's funny.
So that was one of the biggest challenges with technology was the creation of BNI Connect.
How do you see BNI and networking in general moving into the future? Especially with technology, easily available, which opens a lot of avenues for growth. How do you see networking growing towards the future?
I think our organization will continue to grow as it has. When we have 39 years of consecutive growth, year on year on year, 39 years. Very few companies in the world have had that. I remember in 1995, it'd be 1996, people saying to me, the media mostly, saying, the internet is going to have a tragic impact on BNI.
Mm-hmm.
And years later, people were saying, how has the internet impacted BNI? And here's how the internet impacted BNI. In our first 11 years, from 1985 to 2000, and from 1985 to 1996, we opened 500 groups. Okay. In the next 11 years, from 1996 to 2007, we had 5,000 groups. So
Amazing.
I tell people the internet has had a dramatic impact on BNI.
Definitely.
It's
It's the
helped us
total
grow.
opposite. Yes.
Yes, because the technology flattens the communication hierarchy. Back in the 80s and 90s, an interview like this was only a dream. Talking to
Exactly.
somebody on another continent, and having the audio visual that we have, it's a dream. Now, we have interviews like this that I do. We have my podcast that I do every week, my blog, and people from all over the world they can connect with me directly. I read every comment posted on BNI Connect and on my
Oh,
blog.
that's amazing.
So if people want to touch me, if they want to connect with me, they can do it now. Whereas in the 80s and 90s, they had to go through an
Exactly.
assistant on a
Yeah,
telephone, and it
for
was
sure.
impossible. Yeah,
I think the more technology makes it easier for people to communicate, it just opens doors to tremendous opportunities out there, right?
absolutely, no question about it. And we need to be prepared for whatever negative impact there might be, and there are some negative impacts. Technology certainly changed the travel industry dramatically. And AI is going to change several industries pretty quickly, dramatically. I think one of the industries that are going to be impacted pretty quickly are paralegal. Paralegal is going to get replaced, probably one of the first big professions to be replaced by AI. And there might be others. But AI is a great tool. I've used it in a number of ways to help me in business.
That's amazing. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? But I guess there's more benefits than concerns or things to get scared of or negative, impact in the future. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you look back in history, and when radio came out, everyone said newspapers are dead. And then when television came out, everyone said radio is dead. And when the internet came out, everyone said TV is dead. And, we still have TV, we still have radio. Newspapers are now online mostly, but that's 100 years later. And so I think we have to look, the truth is we have no choice. We have to embrace
It's
the
unavoidable.
technology. It's unavoidable.
Exactly.
That horse is out of the barn. So if you don't embrace the technology, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, we might as well utilize it, for the best impact on humanity, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Definitely. Ivan, you've accomplished so much in your life. What else is there? What else are you trying to conquer?
I'm 68 now. BNI is 40 years old. Or will be turning 40 years old. My I want to enjoy life, and to me, enjoying life, it doesn't mean retirement. I think an entrepreneur is either working in their flame or working in their wax. And when they're working in their flame, they're on fire. They're excited. They're passionate about what they're doing. People can hear it in their voice. They can see it in the way they behave. When they're working in their wax, it takes all their energy away. People can hear that in their voice, and they can see that in the way they behave. I went from being, King Arthur leading the charge and building the company to being more like Colonel Sanders, where I'm the spokesperson for the organization. That's my flame. So I see my future continuing to do interviews like this, to pour into people, to tell them what I did right, what I did wrong, what I learned from what I did wrong, so that they can build their business. We all have people that are in our story, right? People that have changed our life in some way. I certainly do. I can tell stories about people who've changed my life, but that's not the most important thing. You want to know what the most important thing is?
What is
I
it?
I think the most important thing is whose story are you in? Not who's in our story, but whose story are we in? Whose life have we changed? Who have we helped in some way to change their life in a positive way? There's a lot of people who change
Of
people's
course.
lives in a negative way,
Uh-huh.
but whose life have you changed in a positive way? So, my future, I want to change more lives. I want to influence more lives in a positive way. That's my flame. And that's why I continue to do this every day.
That's admirable, and it's a great position to be in. It's a lot of, it's the dream of many entrepreneurs out there. And here's my last question for you, Ivan. If you can talk to yourself, back then, what's the main lesson to
If I
young
could reach back
Ivan
and
trying
talk
to
to
build
my
a
young,
business? Yeah.
yeah, to talk to my young self, I think I would say make sure to live your values. If you live your values, get clear with your values as soon as you can. Because I wasn't real clear with my values, vaguely aware of my values in my 20s. But I would say get really clear with your values as soon as possible and live those values. And if you live those values, you'll have no regrets. Because I believe, listen, have I made mistakes? Oh, I've made big mistakes. I've made mistakes where it cost me a lot of money. But those mistakes were my tuition for success. And so if you live your values, I think you have very little, if any, regrets because you make decisions based on the information that you have, living the values that you have. And so I would tell my young self, live your values and don't worry about girls. You'll find an amazing woman in life. It'll work out.
I love that lesson. Thank you so much, Ivan, for joining us today. This has been such a great session, and thank you. We do appreciate your time and all the lessons and insights you've shared with us today.
Thank you. Truly my pleasure. Let me leave you with one last thought. Networking, which is what BNI is all about, networking is a marathon, not a sprint. It's a long-term thing. It's more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships with people. And if you go into the process with that in mind, you're going to do well.
Definitely. That's another thing that I learned from BNI. Such good lessons there. Thank you
Thank you.
again. And for all you listeners out there, just two things that I wanted to highlight today, which I learned personally myself as well. Number one is systems. If you want to build a scalable business that self-propagates, you need to have those systems, and you have to be very, very detailed and explicit about it. The second thing is culture. Like Dr. Ivan Misner said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, guys. So don't forget that these two things need to be balanced. I just wanted to squeeze in one last question, Ivan.
Okay, I'm happy to do it.
Are you so good in karate that we should be calling you a sensei or what?
Well, when you reach black belt, you are a sensei. And what I learned, and I haven't practiced Shotokan, which is where I have the black belt for a number of years. It's pretty hard on the body, and I had a couple of health issues. But yeah, when you're a first degree black belt, which is what I am, what they call a first dan, you are a sensei. And you're not going to believe this because when I first heard it, I didn't believe it. I was told that when you are a first degree black belt, you will recognize that you are a beginner. And I'm like, no, you're a black belt. You're not a beginner. By the time I got to be a first degree black belt, I realized I was really a beginner because my Shihan, who was a seventh degree black belt, and by the way, it takes as long to go from first degree as from white belt to first degree as it does to go from first degree to second degree. And he was seventh degree. And I realized he literally had forgotten more than I knew. And so, yeah, I do know martial arts, but I'm a beginner as a first degree.
That's amazing. We should see a demo one of these days, and maybe a magic trick or so.
I tell you what, I do actually do a martial arts thing in one of my speeches to show the hidden elements of life.
I need to get that video so we can use it for an educational slot.
You got it.
Thank you so much, Ivan, for your time. Many thanks and all the best on all your future endeavors. And thank you for creating BNI for everybody. It's been
Truly
great.
my pleasure.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you so much for keeping us company in this podcast, and I hope you've learned a lot from all the insights shared by Dr. Ivan Misner. If you haven't subscribed yet, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you've got any entrepreneurs in your network, please do share it, especially those who want to grow their business. I hope this was a useful session. We'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.
Please subscribe to our channel and share our content. For more actionable insights on brand and business building, follow us on our agency's social media pages, Illustrado.co, or subscribe to our newsletter via our website, www.illustrado.co.